Boyfriend. Teenage Love. Written by Vella Jamar. Narrated by Deja, Nance. Chapter 17. The first day back to school from winter break, as Diana and I were walking to the bus stop, we saw our old friend Samantha's mother, and she gave us a ride to school. We attended the first 2 classes, and after brunch break, Diana decided she wanted a new outfit, and so we walked to the train station and rode to Berkeley. We headed straight to JCPenney and looked through the clothes until she found something she wanted. I threw the pants on the floor. She scooped them into her book bag, and we were out, or so we thought. We got a block away before the plainclothes security guard tapped us on the shoulder and said, "Girls, let's take a walk back to the store." Our hearts sank. We were overcome with anxiety and fear as we accompanied him to the security's interrogation room. He asked what our names were. I immediately gave him a falsie. Diana gave the correct one. Next thing he did was look in my backpack where my real name surfaced. He looked at me and stated, "I am not in the mood for game playing." I was truthful with the rest of the information. He put in a call to our school's dean to make our crime known. When he finished his report, he called the Berkeley police. How dare he? The police came, put us in handcuffs, and threw us in the back of the police car. It was most embarrassing as they treated us like criminals. He then took us to separate holding cells at the station and locked the door. When they called my mother, she yelled, "I don't give a damn what you do with her. I'm not coming down there to get her." As the police related what she said, he and his coworkers laughed so hard. She absolutely could not stand Diana, thinking she was some kind of bad influence on me. What parents don't realize is that most kids make their own decisions/choices regardless of what everyone else does. All we did was got together and had a lot of fun between our boyfriends and school. They called her back to see if she'd grant permission for Diana's sister to pick me up, in which she reiterated that she still didn't give a damn. Diana did not want her sister Natasha to know of our crime, and called her sister Shay, who did not have a car and was more of a party girl. I don't know why on earth we put faith in her coming. She never did. We called her at least 20 times that day. Each time we called, she kept promising, "I'm on my way out the door right now." Berkeley didn't have a regular jail, only a holding cell. Diana and I were trying to communicate through the thick walls that separated us by yelling each word as loud as we could scream. The officers were really nice throughout the day, which we ended up staying thanks to her party sister Shay. Different officers kept coming over to look into both of our cells as we screamed to communicate. They nodded their head, chuckled, and went back to work. The cells got crowded very quickly, and they decided to put us in the same cell. That eliminated the screaming, which I'm sure they were relieved of. We were talking and laughing out loud about the most ridiculous things. I don't believe she'd had any weed that morning. We were getting tired of calling her sister in vain. As the sun began going down, we decided we'd better call Natasha. We were tired of the day's events and were ready to go home. All day the officers allowed us to make phone calls and didn't see any harm in one more at that point. Diana made the call. It was almost time for them to close down for the evening. One of the officers came in and explained, "Well, girls, if no one comes, we're going to have to take you down to juvenile hall. We can't release you into your own custody, and we can't leave you here overnight." We started to get worried. We weren't laughing anymore. When the officers unlocked the door and said it's time to go, our hearts sank for the second time that day. We were scared. As soon as he opened the back door, to our heart's delight, we saw Natasha and her boyfriend getting out of his truck. We screamed, "There she is! There she is!" And what a pleasant sight she was. We went back in. She signed some papers, and we were off. I don't think anyone said a word on the trip home after we all squeezed into her boyfriend's gray truck. It was a real cutie pie. A married one, unfortunately. I don't know if she was reprimanded or not. I went home and headed straight to bed. I didn't want to hear anything anyone had to say. I was about to fall asleep when Marcus threw pebbles at the window and bid me to come down. "Happy New Year!" he exclaimed a few days late as he grabbed me. I told him I was really tired, careful not to tell what I was tired from, and that he really should come back the next day, or Friday for that matter. He had traveled on foot, unfortunately, and I didn't want to be out long in the winter cold. I apologized for not going to be able to stay out with him, but I was truly tired and kissed him goodbye for now. The next day, Diana and I hurried to school. We were really anxious to go that day. After about 2 classes, we were summoned to the dean's office. She reprimanded and suspended us for a few days. Before we left, she replied, "Boy, you two really believe in sticking together, don't you?" I guess she had seen us around campus. We had literally become inseparable that school year. You never saw one without the other. Relieved to be out of her presence, we hurried outside and sat down to get some air. Up walks the prying, flirtatious, meddling security guard. "Okay, which one is the thief and which one is the accessory?" he asked as we had been branded. Diana quickly replied, "None of your business," and all three of us laughed hysterically. The personnel used to have lunch together discussing events of certain students. Diana and I had apparently been the topic of discussion the previous day. I knew Mrs. Cohn was disappointed in me. She wrote in my yearbook the previous year to stop fighting because I was much too intelligent of a young lady for that. I can just imagine what she may have been thinking as she got the latest news, and it wasn't anything that I was proud of. Diana and I hung out over her sister Natasha's house during our time off from school. For a few days, I noticed a peculiar smell. It was a really stinky discharge that I couldn't get rid of regardless of how many baths I took. I went to the clinic to find out what was wrong. The doctor gave me 16 pills, half for me and the other half for Marcus. Naturally, I took my portion right away, and the discharge vanished. Not long after I received the pills, Marcus wandered over and made himself at home. I let him in and told him he had given me something to cause me discharge. "Ah, no," he replied. "I didn't give it to you, you gave it to me." He was on the defense as if he'd already known about it. The physician said that males carry it from one female to the next without having any of the discharge symptoms that females experienced. I told him that the doctor said he had to take some pills or else he would reinfect me. He exclaimed, "I'm not taking anything because I already took them." I said, "Fine, you don't take them, we just won't sleep together ever again." He thought about it for a few seconds and went to the kitchen sink, poured a glass of water and asked, "Where are the pills?" I handed them to him, and he gulped all 8 down in one swallow. We laughed when he almost choked trying to get them down all at once. We then went back to the living room and sat down on the couch. When we heard my mother's car drive up, we stepped on the porch and finished talking. Walking home from school the next day, a serviceman old enough to be my grandfather started flirting. I wasn't interested in his old behind, but he talked me into coming to the recruiting office to sign up for the armed services. After I signed some papers, he said he would pick me up the next day to take the test. I couldn't dare go without Diana and asked him if he'd mind picking her up. "Not at all," he replied. The next morning, we drove to Oakland to take the examination. It seems like it took forever as we marked one answer after the other. When we finally finished hours later, he was kind enough to take us out to lunch at McDonald's before dropping us off at school. A few weeks later, we had career day for the seniors. The guy from the recruiting office who'd picked us up to take the test had a booth set up and some very attractive friends along. Excited about our results, we asked how we did, and he pessimistically responded, "Below average." Still trying to remain hopeful, we then asked which one of us got the higher mark. Not wanting to disappoint either of us, he said, "One of you did a little better than the other." Refusing to tell which one, as he smiled with big ugly bumps all over his face that needed popping. We laughed as they flirted and asked for our phone numbers. They were some very respectable men with their southern accents. We left them with our correct telephone number and promised to stay in touch. Reality of going to college was approaching. All seniors who were planning to attend and desired financial assistance had to fill out grant applications. The pressure was on. There were deadlines that had to be met in order to receive money for the upcoming school term. I didn't know what I wanted to study at college, but knew that I wanted to go. I was at a loss as to what to put in the slot for major. Over the years, I hadn't given much thought about it. My Aunt Jerry had been asking since kindergarten. The time had finally come to decide. We used to feel as if we were being trapped when she'd ask the question so prematurely, figuring we had plenty of time to think about it. She used to elaborate how those Chinese kids were in 3rd grade or younger, already having declared what they were going to be when they grew up. She wanted some of that to rub off on us. "Nurse," I said out loud to my counselor. She pointed out that I had just missed 4 years of prerequisites. "Stenographer." She said they make a lot of money, but you need to be able to type really fast on top of learning shorthand. airline steward. She said if you don't mind being up in the air and away from home quite often, it could work. Servicewoman. I didn't care for a response from that one. Diana and I had already failed the test miserably. I called Kathy and we brainstormed. She told me she had attended College of Alameda years earlier and studied tailoring, and that they had an excellent program. That was it. I'd mastered sewing for the past 3 years and had become quite good at it. I was a very creative individual. Upon calling the school, I learned that they had a full curriculum. I filled the major slot with fashion design. My sewing teacher told me to please study fashion merchandising. I had picked out more than a few complicated patterns during the year and tried to make her do the most difficult parts. She also warned me not to take any 8 a.m. classes. Even though we were supposed to be at school at 8:30, Diana and I were late most of the time. While speaking to Marcus about college, he told me one day that he was going to move to Salt Lake City to go to college to study to be a veterinarian. After years of talking about it, he was finally going to make his move. I was happy for him and sad at the same time. I went into immediate panic, already starting to miss the boy that I had come to love. I knew it would be good to go to college. I had resolved to go myself, though not so far away. I thought it would be a good idea to give him a going away party before he left. I began to tell different ones about his wonderful send-off bash. One of his old friends asked him one day while they were playing basketball in the Richmond High School gym when he was leaving to go to college. He told him he wasn't going anywhere. When I asked him again, he reassured me he was going. I didn't know what to believe and picked up the phone and called his brother Charles, who said, "Tandy, Marcus is the biggest liar from here to New York and back a few times." I thought to myself, who does start college in the middle of the year? When I told him what Charles said, he was surprised that I had asked him. We had pretty much kept family out of our relationship. I concluded that if he left, I would miss him immensely, and if not, then I would go on enjoying him, but wasn't going to keep worrying about it. I loved him and hoped that he would stay nearby to attend college so that I could continue his sometimes pleasant company. Every Friday night, if I didn't call Marcus, he'd call me. He and his grandfather had a thing about watching The Incredible Hulk. No matter where we were in conversation, when the Hulk began bursting through, he'd drop the phone and start telling Pops to, "Look at the Incredible Hulk go, Pops! Just look at him go!" Pops would be in the background laughing hysterically. At the same time, I was looking on as my younger siblings got a kick out of watching it as well. I never heard his grandmother during their private TV time. Maybe she did as I had and let them have their special moment. They delighted the sight at the green monster transitioning from a human being. He loved his grandparents and seemed right at home with them. I think he brought a lot of life into their home. His grandfather seemed to really enjoy Marcus's companionship as he helped his grandmother, who was still full of spunk, take care of him. It was a happy home when the three of them lived there. I just wait patiently for him to remember our conversation and pick back up the phone to resume talking. He was a little spoiled with his grandmother forking over those car keys and didn't walk as much to come and visit me. The distance was a lot further than a hop, skip, and jump around the block when he stayed with his mother. Sunday evening, as Marcus was dropping me off, I took his watch and ran in the house. That time, I took it trying to get the money out of him that he still owed me for the motel bill that he still hadn't paid. He was angry. That watch had special meaning, and he really wanted it back that evening. He climbed on the roof, stopping in front of my younger sibling's room in front of the house. I don't know where they were, but we talked through the window as he begged for his watch. "I promised to return it after you give back the $20 you owe me," I told him. While we were talking as he hung onto the window ledge, my next-door neighbors drove up from church. They looked at him standing on our roof and probably wondered what the hell was he doing up there. Marcus looked down and said, "Hi, how are you doing?" They looked up with a bewildered expression and responded the same. I asked him to please get down before someone else saw him. He pleaded for it one last time. I refused and he climbed down after they went inside of their house. The next morning, I was about to walk out the door when the neighbor knocked. My mother answered, and she told of seeing Marcus on the roof. She went on to say, "If anyone is ever on our roof, to be sure and come tell us." I guess she wrestled all night with how to present tattling. Why on earth would anyone climb on her one-story roof? I listened at the other front door as they talked. As they wrapped up their conversation, I tried to sneak out of the back door when my mother hollered, "Tandy, come here." I was molded and had to explain. I told her that I had taken his watch. He was trying to get it back and had climbed up the roof in the front to beg for it back. I told her that I had pleaded for him to get down and that he refused until I gave back his watch, and that is how the neighbors came to see him. I don't know if she bought it, but that's what I told her and quickly ran out the door. I rushed to school and told Diana what happened as I informed her of just about everything that occurred between Marcus and I. She now has stories of her own to tell. She was getting to know her boyfriend's family and told of how they boldly talked back to their parents, their dad more so than their mom, as if they had the right. She said her aunt would have slapped the pure gold, not quite the word she used, out of her, had she talked to her in such disrespectful tones. We weren't going out as much as we had the previous summer now that we both had boyfriends, but we still managed to steal away to the club a few times. Do You Love What You Feel was a real picker-upper song by the still very hot Shaka Khan and was being played passionately at the New Age Club. I was ready to dance each time it was played, but was never picked while the song was actually playing. I always got picked right before or after the song, but never during. I should have walked up and snatched someone to dance with. I really loved that song. It instantly put you in a dancing mood. We still had plenty of fun when we did go out. As promised, we stayed in touch with the guys from the recruiting office. They were giving a party for people who'd actually passed the test. When we called them one day, they told us to come to a party that they were giving. It was a send-off celebration they were hosting right in the recruiting office. Diana and I danced the night away to the Whispers as the beat goes on, along with other songs that were being played. Our friend Connie from high school was there to celebrate. She was on her way to serve our country in a stint for the U.S. Army. As the party fizzled down to a few people, Diana and I jumped in some stranger's car and went to another party, which had even fewer people. From there, we decided to call it a night. We had to sign up for one more round at the college to get the last of the units towards our high school diploma. Samantha, the girl Marcus brought to my Halloween party, was also there to receive credits to graduate from Gompers, which was the local continuation school. Though Diana was friends with both of us, they had known each other a lot longer. She had a crush on my Marcus. We were both acting like little children as we bragged about articles of clothing that we were wearing that belonged to Marcus to Diana so she could go back and tell the other. We were trying to make one another jealous, though I knew he was mine. Diana felt trapped between our feuding. Things were a little tense as we continued sporting his clothes, bragging about them instead of focusing on our work. When I confronted Marcus about her wearing his coat, he was ready with, "I left my jacket over there when I went to go see her brother." He would never talk about it any further. I had my suspicions, but couldn't prove anything was going on between them. Marcus and I spent a lovely week, practically every day during Easter vacation. I was beginning to feel like he really loved me. I knew in my heart he couldn't possibly love Samantha or anyone else for that matter in the way that he loved me. He was my guy, even if he didn't know it yet. One evening, without warning, he daredeviled across the roof. I was totally unprepared and had taken my stick out the window since he seemed to have seized the roof climbing activities. I was dead asleep until he touched me with a big grin pasted across his face. He was very quiet and sneaky. He didn't have any shoes on and said he had to take them off because they made too much noise. When I whisked him downstairs, he was scared to walk where he had hidden them in our neighbor's bushes because his light was now on. We walked around the corner. As we concluded, he told me to see if I could sneak his shoes out of the neighbor's bushes before he saw them. I said okay, but when I went home trying not to be so noticeable as I searched, they were either gone or I looked in the wrong spot for them. When the neighbor went to inspect his flowering, which he did quite frequently, he saw the dress shoes and gave them to my mother, who had given them to my brother. I don't know how Marcus got them shoes back, but somehow he did. When he went to his mother's house barefooted, most likely to borrow shoes from Raymond since his were gone, he said she told him upon looking at his bare feet, "Boy, you better stay off of people's roof." We didn't even know she had heard about that incident. He said he acted like he didn't know what she was talking about. I talked to Diana early Friday and she said Samantha suggested that we got together to have a talk. I didn't need to talk about anything to her concerning Marcus. He belonged to me and that was final. On a whim Friday night, I called Samantha, just trying to be funny to inquire about her so-called talk. Lo and behold, Marcus answered the phone. I didn't recognize his voice at first. He quickly handed it to Samantha, who happily exclaimed, "If you want all of us to talk, you better hurry up and come before he leaves." I didn't think it was so funny after all to have called to gloat, and quickly said goodbye and hung up. Boy, was I hot. I started to go and wait for him by the underpass, which was the route he had to take to zoom back to his mother's house. I was too hot damn mad to move. He called less than 10 minutes after I hung up the phone with her from his mother's house talking about, "Hey, what's up?" I slammed down the phone so hard, it is a miracle that it didn't break. Sunday was both Easter and Raymond's birthday. Olita always delighted in telling what they were going to do or where they were going. She told me years later that they also used Marcus's clubhouse each time they got a chance. In celebration of Raymond's 17th birthday, they were going to a concert. Marcus waited for them to leave. They were the last ones in his way of having the entire house to himself. Everyone else was grown, gone, or at church, I assumed. As soon as they left, he called and kept on calling, begging me to come around there. I refused. I wanted to go and be with him, but I had to show him he wasn't going to be messing around on me and getting away with it. He got the message and finally stopped calling. I finished seaming an outfit and caught up on some reading. I loved that bozo and couldn't get him out of my mind, but refused to give in. The first thing I did when I was mad at him was withhold sex. That always made him crazy, even if he could have gone somewhere else to get it. He kept on coming back. I loved him to death mentally and emotionally, and he loved me to death sexually. The next day after I came home from school, I kept thinking about him but refused to call as bad as I wanted to. I was about to go to bed when he knocked on the door. I tried to shut it when I saw that it was him, but he quickly pulled me out to the porch. He apologized, saying he only picked up the phone because he was near it, but there was absolutely nothing going on between them. He said he was there to see her brother, whom also had a love for pigeons. Yeah, I responded. He kept trying to hug me and I kept pushing him away. He looked very sad. That was his way to win me over so I could feel sorry for him. He continuously asked me to go to a baseball game with him, and each time I told him no and kept pushing him away as he kept trying to get next to me. He got tired of begging and finally said, "Okay, this is my last time asking." I said no again, and he left with a very sad look on his face. I waited until he got completely out of sight before I zoomed to the corner to see if I could catch up. When I didn't see him, I turned right and ran a couple more blocks in hot pursuit. I didn't see him anywhere. I wasn't going to run any further and began walking back. Suddenly, and without warning, he emerged from behind a truck and asked amusingly, "Going somewhere?" He burst into laughter. I tried to play it off by telling him I was out jogging, and began walking back home. He grabbed me as I tried to hide the smile of embarrassment, hugging me as I tried pushing him away. We got 1 block away from my house and he pulled me towards him and said, "Come on, baby, let's go make a Marcus Jr." I replied, "I'm not having a baby right now. I'm going to college." I was flabbergasted at his suggestion, and my head was floating so far up in the sky I couldn't see straight. He had never asked me anything like that before. I hadn't really thought about having a baby, especially that soon in my life. He said it again, grabbed and kissed me with heated passion, making me forget all about the phone call incident a couple of days earlier. I was clearly not thinking on April 7th, 1980, when we laid down and made his firstborn child. We had always been very careful up until that point. I'd always told him when to jump up as to not get me pregnant. That time after we made love, he did not jump, and I knew immediately that I had conceived. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. What in the world had I just gotten myself into? I was signed up to attend college in the fall. He walked me home after we made Junior, and I went to my room for some heavy thinking. 2 days later, I saw Samantha at college. I didn't know who put in the air that I wanted to fight her, but somehow it was out. Things were a little tense in class. I avoided her as much as possible after hearing the rumor. When class was over, me and Diana walked to the bus stop and waited as we normally did. When Samantha and her friend came, she stopped on the opposite side of where we were standing as if she wanted to fight. She normally walked to the other bus stop after class. She stood there a few moments and then walked off. I told Diana, that redheaded bitch must want to fight. Why else would she stop? Again, my big mouth got the best of me. She turned around and yelled, "Can you whoop this redheaded bitch? Can you whoop this redheaded bitch?" Oh shit. My heart sank immediately. I didn't realize I was talking so loudly. I did not want to fight, but she heard me and it looked like it was on. We argued back and forth as we walked out more into the parking lot. Diana blurted out, "Is that all y'all's gonna do is argue? 'Cause if it is, we could just go." I don't know what possessed me, but I went up and socked her in the face. As big as she was, she slung one punch at me and I was on the ground. I had on some brand new jeans, and there was a knee print on them from having landed on my knees. She knocked me down, but somehow I ended up on top of her. I don't know how. Maybe because I was smaller and quicker. It all happened so fast. We quickly grabbed a hold of each other's hair. Diana instigated, "Is that all y'all is gonna do is pull each other's hair?" I don't know what possessed me, but I reached down and bit her big fat cheek. She let out a holler that her own mother should have heard from the other side of town. When I stopped biting and let her go, she too let me go. When we got off the ground, she was hot, pissy mad and ready to go a few more rounds. I took off my hard clog shoes and hit her in the face with them and ran. Diana said, "You better stop running from her." That was a big, big girl, and I didn't care what she said. I was not going to get clobbered. I knew I didn't have a chance. I hit and ran and hit. She didn't have the energy to chase me and casually requested, "Why don't you be still so I can kick your ass?" I decided to pass and kept my routine until she got tired of walk chasing me and left. I later found out that she had walked to Marcus's house and told his grandmother what had happened. She was so happy we had a fight over Marcus. I didn't consider it that way at all. We fought because she accidentally heard me call her a redheaded bitch. I went home and took a shower knowing that I was pregnant with Junior. I felt like a fool having fought for what some would think was over Marcus. I vowed that night as I showered that it would never, ever happen again. Except for punching one white girl and almost hitting a black one over the head with a radio, I have kept my word. When I called to speak to Marcus, his grandmother said, "Y'all should not be fighting. It is not something nice girls do." I listened without responding. I didn't know her very well. She said that Marcus was not at home at the time, and we hung up. The next morning at school, a few people came up to me and asked about the fight. Though Samantha attended Gompers, she had come to Harriel's, apparently before I arrived, wanting to finish the brawl. She told everyone we fought over Marcus, and that she had to get a rabies shot after she got bit by my dog self. I told whoever boldly asked that I was not fighting over Marcus Ream. I really didn't want to be bothered with it. I had more important things to think about. The rest of the day went pretty well as I pondered the responsibility that I might definitely be pregnant this time. After school was out, I walked all the way home by myself deep in thought, wondering what in the world I would do with the baby if I was in fact pregnant this time. I sure was not ready for one. My life was about to change forever and I was not quite prepared. Diana was spending a lot of time with Richard and sometimes they went home together. Would I put off college or would I go on as planned? I had a lot of questions that needed answers. With all the false pregnancy alarms over the years and the late menstruations, there was no doubt about it this time, though. I tried to convince myself that maybe I hadn't conceived. What in the world was I thinking? I went in my room and meditated for hours until I fell fast asleep. It took Marcus a few days to come over after the fight. I tried hard to convince him that the brawl had nothing to do with him. I was pleading a hopeless cause. His ego could not accept otherwise. He just sat back in the chair and laughed. We spent a few minutes together, the normal hugging and kissing, but I was trying to wrap up the school year and didn't have a lot of time for anything else. I was studying hard for the final government test. That would be the deciding factor as to whether I would walk across the stage or not, and I meant to walk with other seniors who'd been working so hard for that day. I had all of the other classes hemmed up. Diana didn't wish to talk to anyone about walking the stage. She unfortunately would not be graduating on time. Each time her boyfriend inquired, she'd quickly change the subject. We hung together so much, everyone thought neither of us would graduate. I had faithfully kept up with the number of credits I possessed, and the amount needed since doing so poorly my first 2 years of high school. I went to summer school each summer to make up for the mess I had made in the ninth and 10th grade. I planned on walking with my peers when it was time to do so. This has been Boyfriend, Teenage Love, written by Vella Jamar, narrated by Deja Nance.